She was just a simple woman at the prestigious piano recital. When the arrogant maestro completely ignored her, everyone expected her to disappear into the background. But the moment her fingers touched the keys, the first melody silenced the room. No one expected what happened next, especially not the now stunned maestro. Claire Adams moved silently through the empty concert hall, her cleaning cart squeaking gently against the polished floor. At 59, her weathered hands had scrubbed these same surfaces. For nearly 15 years, the magnificent Steinway grand piano gleamed under the dim stage lights, almost calling to her in the emptiness. "Another day done, Mrs. Adams," called security guard Frank from the doorway. "Just finishing up," Claire replied, her eyes lingering on the piano. "You can go on ahead. I'll lock up," Frank nodded, familiar with her routine. "Don't stay till late now. Good night." "Good night, Frank." The door clicked shut and Claire's shoulders relaxed. This was her favorite moment, when the prestigious Westbrook Concert Hall belonged only to her, when the echoes of applause had faded and the critical eyes of the musical elite were gone. She finished her cleaning methodically, each movement practiced and efficient. The floors gleamed, the brass railings shone. Finally, Claire allowed herself to approach the stage, her heart quickening as it always did. The Steinway waited like an old friend. Claire glanced at her watch, 11:30 p.m. She had an hour before the night manager would make his rounds. Settling onto the bench, Claire closed her eyes and let her fingers hover above the keys. This piano had been played by the greatest musicians in the world, and now, in the quiet of night, it was hers. Her hands descended, and Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata filled the empty hall. Claire played from memory, her fingers moving with surprising dexterity. Without formal training, she played by ear and heart, piecing together techniques she'd observed during countless performances and rehearsals. As a child, Claire had shown remarkable talent. Her elementary school teacher had even arranged for a special audition at a music academy. But when her father lost his job, the family piano was sold and lessons became an unaffordable luxury. Life moved on. Marriage, children, divorce, and the daily struggle to make ends meet pushed music to the sidelines. But here, in the stolen moments after her shift, Claire reconnected with her passion. Transitioning from Beethoven to Chopin, she lost herself in the music, unaware of the door at the back of the hall opening silently. Thomas Reynolds, the assistant director of the Westbrook Symphony, stood transfixed. He'd forgotten his wallet and returned to find this, the cleaning lady, playing with the passion and intuition of someone who truly understood music. As the final notes faded, Claire sighed deeply. "That was quite remarkable," Thomas said. Claire jumped up, nearly knocking over the bench. "I'm so sorry. I know I shouldn't be." Thomas raised his hand. "Please don't apologize. How long have you been playing like this?" Claire nervously twisted her cleaning rag. Just a few minutes each night after hours." "No, I mean, how long have you been able to play piano at this level?" She looked down. "I've played since I was a child. Never had proper training, though." Thomas approached the stage, his expression thoughtful. "Mrs. Adams, are you aware that our orchestra is holding auditions? We're looking for a new pianist after Mrs. Levinson's retirement." Claire gave a small, dismissive laugh. "Oh, I could never. Those auditions are for professionals, conservatory graduates. The auditions are for whoever has the talent." Thomas insisted. "And you, Mrs. Adams, have something rare." Claire shook her head. "Someone like me doesn't belong on that stage, not as a performer. At least think about it." Thomas placed a business card on the piano. "The auditions are next Friday. Just consider it." After he left, Claire stared at the card, her heart racing with both terror and a tiny, dangerous spark of hope. The next morning, Claire clutched Thomas's business card as she rode the bus to work. The Westbrook Symphony auditions. The very thought made her stomach clench. The concert hall was bustling when she arrived. Stagehands arranged chairs for the evening's chamber music performance, while administrative staff hurried through the corridors with clipboards and phones. "Morning, Mrs. Adams," called Sophia from the box office. "Big day Friday, huh? Everyone's talking about the auditions." Claire nodded awkwardly, pulling her cleaning cart closer. "They say Curtis Ellsworth himself will be judging." Sophia continued, eyes wide. Can you imagine? The man's never given a positive review in 20 years. Curtis Ellsworth, even Claire, knew that name, the most feared music critic in the country. His reviews could launch careers or destroy them with a few cutting words. His standards were impossibly high, his tongue mercilessly sharp throughout the day. Claire noticed the atmosphere of nervous excitement. Young pianists with prestigious conservatory. Tote bags practiced finger exercises in the lobby. Staff whispered about which famous musicians would be competing for the coveted position. During her lunch break, Claire sat alone in the employee break room, unwrapping her modest sandwich. The television mounted on the wall was playing a local news segment about the upcoming auditions. This position with the Westbrook Symphony is one of the most prestigious in the country, explained the reporter. The selected pianist will not only perform with the orchestra, but will also be featured as a soloist in their international tour next season. The camera cut to Curtis Ellsworth himself, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his silver hair perfectly styled. We're looking for technical perfection, of course, he said, his voice cultured and cold. But more importantly, we need someone who understands the soul of the music, someone with proper training and background, who can honor the traditions of classical music. Claire's hands trembled slightly. Proper training, proper background, everything she lacked. Later that afternoon, she was polishing the brass handrails in the mezzanine when Thomas Reynolds found her. Have you thought about what I said, Mrs. Adams? Claire kept her eyes on her work. Mr. Reynolds, it's very kind of you, but I'm not qualified. You heard Mr. Ellsworth on the news. He wants someone with proper training. Thomas leaned against the railing. Ellsworth wants what everyone wants, someone who can play magnificently. The rest is just packaging. I haven't touched a piano properly in front of others since I was 12, Claire admitted. And I've never played with an orchestra. Yet every night you play some of the most difficult pieces in the repertoire. I've been listening. More than once. Thomas confessed, your Chopin is intuitive. Your Beethoven has raw emotion that most technically perfect pianists lack. Claire finally looked up. You've been listening several times. I started staying late just to hear you. Thomas smiled. I've been in music administration for 30 years, Mrs. Adams. I know talent when I hear it, even if I wanted to try. And I'm not saying I do. I don't have the right clothes, the right look. Claire gestured to her uniform. I'm a cleaning lady, not a concert pianist. The auditions are blind, at least the preliminaries. Candidates perform behind a screen so the judges can't see who's playing. Something flickered in Claire's eyes. Really, it's to prevent bias. Thomas pulled an application form from his pocket. Just fill this out. The preliminary round requires one piece of your choice. Claire took the form, her hand trembling slightly. I wouldn't even know what to play. Play what speaks to you, Thomas said simply. Play what you play when you think no one is listening. Long after Thomas left, Claire stared at the application form, Beethoven's Appassionata echoing in her mind. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. The application form sat on her modest kitchen table, blank except for her name, which she'd written and erased 3 times before deciding her handwriting was good enough. You're being ridiculous, she told herself, warming milk on the stove. They don't want people like you. But Thomas's words kept echoing in her mind. I know talent when I hear it. Claire had lived a life of practical decisions. When her musical aspiration had to be abandoned, she'd accepted it. When her marriage fell apart, she'd focused on supporting her 2 children. Now, with her kids grown and her life settled into a predictable rhythm, was there room for such an outlandish dream? The next morning, she found herself lingering near the administrative offices at work. Through the open door, she could see young musicians submitting their applications, confident and polished in their designer clothes and perfectly manicured hands. Can I help you, Mrs. Adams? Asked Patricia, the administrative assistant. Oh, I was just cleaning, Claire mumbled quickly, wiping a spotless section of wall. That evening, she pulled out her small electronic keyboard from the closet, a garage sale purchase she used to practice fingerings when she couldn't stay late at the concert hall. It was nothing like the magnificent Steinway, but it was something. Claire placed her fingers on the keys. and began to play the opening movement of Beethoven's Appassionata. The piece had always spoken to her, its storm of emotions, its technical challenges, its moments of both tenderness and fury. It was like life itself, compressed into music. Her modest apartment filled with sound. Next door, her neighbor's television fell silent. Was he listening? The thought made her fingers stumble. This was madness. She'd be laughed off the stage, if she even made it that far. And yet, Claire thought about her father who'd always told her she played like she had music in her very bones. She thought about her children who'd never even heard her play properly. She thought about all the nights spent cleaning up after other people's musical triumphs. What if just once? She stepped into the light. The next morning, Claire arrived at work early. Before she could lose her nerve, she walked directly to the administrative office and handed Patricia her completed application. "You're applying for the pianist position?" Patricia asked, eyebrows raised. "Yes," Claire said simply, her voice steadier than she felt. "Yes, I am," as she walked away. Her heart pounded so hard. She was certain everyone could hear it. Friday was just 3 days away. Curtis Ellsworth adjusted his bow tie as he surveyed the Westbrook Concert Hall auditorium. As the most influential music critic in the country, he was accustomed to the best seat in the house. Today, however, he sat center stage alongside the orchestra's conductor and artistic director, ready to judge those who dared to audition. "How many applicants do we have?" he asked, leaping through the stack of resumes before him. 78, replied conductor Maurice Bennett. "We've scheduled preliminary rounds today and tomorrow, final rounds on Saturday." Curtis sniffed. "Let's hope at least one is worth my time." At 63, Curtis had built his career on an unerring ear and an acid pen. Trained at Juilliard before a hand injury ended his own performance aspiration, he channeled his frustration into criticism, becoming feared and respected in equal measure. His column, Ellsworth's Verdict, was considered the ultimate authority on classical performance. "We have some impressive candidates," offered Thomas Reynolds, sliding a particular resume toward Curtis. "Juilliard, Curtis Institute, Royal Academy graduates. Pedigree is no guarantee of musicality," Curtis replied dismissively. "I've heard technically perfect performances that left me cold." "Then what are you looking for?" Thomas asked. Curtis paused, his expression softening momentarily. Something rare, something authentic. The hardness returned to his face. "But let's be realistic. Conservatory training is essential. You can't interpret what you don't understand." Thomas exchanged a quick glance with the conductor. Of course, the first candidates were predictably polished, young virtuosos from prestigious music schools. Their techniques flawless, their interpretations safe. Curtis made cutting notes after each performance, too mechanical. No understanding of Chopin's Robot. Technically adequate, artistically vacant. During a break, Curtis overheard staff whispering about an unusual candidate, someone unexpected. His interest peaked momentarily, then faded. Probably another social media sensation with more followers than talent. "Next candidate, please," he called, straightening his bow tie. Behind the screen, a figure took a seat at the piano. Curtis noted the hesitation before the first notes. Amateurish nerves, he assumed. He prepared his pen for another disappointing assessment. The opening chords of Beethoven's Appassionata filled the hall. Curtis frowned. The choice was ambitious. Perhaps too ambitious. He listened critically, waiting for the technical challenges of the piece to expose the player's weaknesses. But something in the interpretation caught his attention. There was an unusual quality to the playing, raw, emotional, unrestrained by conventional interpretations, not perfectly polished. Certainly, but oddly compelling. As the movement progressed, Curtis found himself setting down his pen, his critical faculties temporarily suspended by something he hadn't expected to find. Sincerity. When the piece ended, he cleared his throat. "Please proceed to the final round," he said, surprised by his own decision. Saturday, 10 a.m. Friday passed in a blur for Claire. The preliminary round had been surreal, playing behind a screen, hearing the brief silence after she finished, then those unexpected words. "Proceed to the final round." She'd floated through her cleaning shift afterward, barely registering the congratulations from Thomas, who'd sought her out with a broad smile. "You did it. I knew you would," he'd said. "But the real challenge comes tomorrow. The final round is without the screen." Without the screen. The thought sent cold ripples through Claire's body. Tomorrow, Curtis Ellsworth would see exactly who had been playing the Appassionata. Saturday morning arrived with golden autumn sunlight streaming through Claire's bedroom window. She stood before her modest closet, reality crashing down around her. What does one wear to a prestigious piano audition? Her best outfit, a simple cream-colored dress she wore to church, would have to do. She pinned her graying hair back neatly, applied a touch of lipstick, and tried to calm her racing heart. At the concert hall, Claire entered through the stage door rather than the service entrance for the first time in 15 years. The backstage area buzzed with activity. The remaining candidates, all significantly younger than Claire, paced nervously or warmed up their fingers with silent exercises. A young woman in an elegant black dress stared at Claire curiously. "Are you one of the judge's assistants?" she asked politely, before Claire could answer. The stage manager appeared. 10 minutes. "Everyone, Miss Adams, you'll be fourth." The young woman's eyes widened in surprise, then quickly composed her expression. "Oh, I'm sorry, I thought." "It's all right," Claire said quietly. "I usually clean the bathrooms down the hall." The young woman blinked rapidly, clearly unsure how to respond. One by one, the candidates were called to perform. Claire listened to their flawless renditions, each technically brilliant. When her turn came, her legs felt lean as she walked onto the stage. The lights were brighter than she'd imagined. At the center of the auditorium sat 3 figures: Conductor Bennett, Thomas Reynolds, and Curtis Ellsworth, whose piercing eyes narrowed as she approached the piano. "Ms. Adams," Curtis said, consulting his notes, "it says here you'll be playing Beethoven's Appassionata." His tone was neutral, but his expression betrayed his surprise at her appearance. "Yes, sir," Claire replied, her voice barely audible. "And your musical background?" Claire hesitated. "Largely self-taught." "Mr. Ellsworth," a whisper rippled through the small audience of orchestra members and staff. Curtis's eyebrows rose. "Self-taught," he repeated, the words dripping with skepticism. "And your current occupation?" Claire swallowed hard. "I'm the evening custodian here at Westbrook Hall." The whispers grew louder. Curtis leaned forward, a cold smile playing at his lips. "The custodian? How interesting. Please enlighten us with your interpretation." As Claire approached the piano, Curtis Ellsworth glanced down at his papers, absently flipping through them without looking up. Sheet music, barely registering her existence. Thomas Reynolds cleared his throat. "Mr. Ellsworth, this is Ms. Adams, our next candidate." Curtis finally looked up, his gaze sliding over Claire with practiced disinterest. "Yes. The custodian, was it?" "Yes, sir. I'm the evening custodian here." Curtis nodded vaguely, already turning back to his notes. "And what conservatory are you from, Miss Adams?" "I didn't attend conservatory. I had lessons as a child until I was 12. This admission finally drew Curtis's full attention, though not in the way Claire had hoped. He exchanged a meaningful glance with Conductor Bennett, then checked his watch. "I see," he said, his tone suggesting he'd seen all he needed to. He made a small notation, then gestured absently toward the piano. "Well, I suppose we should hear you since you're already here. We're running behind schedule, so please keep it brief." Claire's fingers trembled as she adjusted the bench. No one was even looking at her. The judges were reviewing notes from previous candidates. The orchestra members were whispering among themselves. Someone in the back was quietly packing up their instrument. She had become invisible. A placeholder, a formality, a box to check before they moved on to the serious candidates. Her 15 years of dedication, her passion for music, her genuine talent, none of it mattered because they had already decided she wasn't worth their attention. "Whenever you're ready, Miss Adams," Curtis said distractedly, still writing notes about the previous performer. Claire stared at the gleaming keys of the Steinway, the same keys that had been her solace for years. She thought about returning to her cart and mop, to the comfortable invisibility of her regular life. Then she remembered her father's words from long ago. "When you play Claire Bear, It's like you're telling us all a secret. Something beautiful and true. Something beautiful and true. Not technically perfect, not formally correct, just honest. Claire straightened her back and positioned her hands above the keys. If they wouldn't bother to see her, perhaps they would have no choice but to hear her. "I'm ready," she said quietly, though no one seemed to be listening. Then her fingers descended onto the keys, and the world changed. The opening chords of Beethoven's Appassionata resonated through the concert hall with an intensity that silenced the whispers immediately. Claire's hands moved across the keyboard with a confidence that belied her earlier nervousness, her body swaying slightly with the rhythm of the music. Curtis Ellsworth's smug smile faltered. This was the same pianist he'd heard behind the screen. There was no mistaking the distinctive interpretation, but seeing the source of those powerful sounds created a cognitive dissonance he was unprepared for. The Appassionata's first movement demands both technical precision and emotional depth. Claire's rendition wasn't technically flawless. A professional would spot the occasional imperfection, but there was something in her playing that transcended mere technical execution. She played not as someone performing Beethoven, but as someone experiencing Beethoven. Every crescendo, every delicate passage, every thundering chord carrying the weight of genuine emotion. Thomas Reynolds watched Curtis's face carefully. The critic's expression had transformed from condescending amusement to stunned attention. His pen remained motionless in his hand, his eyes never leaving Claire's movements as Claire entered the development section, where the complexity of the piece intensifies. Several orchestra members leaned forward in their seats. The principal violinist's eyes were closed, his head nodding almost imperceptibly with the music. The concert master's expression was one of growing admiration. Curtis found himself unable to maintain his professional detachment. There was something in this woman's playing that reached past his critical faculties and touched something deeper, a reminder of why he had fallen in love with music in the first place. Claire herself was lost in the music, unaware of the transformation occurring in her audience. The years of playing in the empty concert hall had freed her from self-consciousness. Here, under the bright lights, she played with the same abandoned joy she'd always found in her solitary performances. Her fingers danced across the keys during the faster passages, then pressed with deliberate strength for the thunderous chords that marked the movement's climactic moments. Her body moved with the music, her face reflecting the emotional journey of the piece, the struggle, the passion, the moments of tender reflection. As the movement approached its conclusion, Curtis's pen slipped from his fingers, clattering to the floor. He didn't reach for it. His eyes remained fixed on Claire, his expression one of disbelief, mingled with a grudging respect. When the final chords resonated through the hall, Claire's hands remained suspended above the keys for a moment before slowly lowering to her lap. The silence that followed was absolute, a vacuum of sound that seemed to stretch endlessly. Then from the back of the hall, someone began to applaud. Others joined in, the applause building to a thunderous ovation. Orchestra members were standing, their faces alight with genuine appreciation. Only Curtis remained seated, his expression unreadable, his world quietly rearranging itself around him. Claire opened her eyes, startled by the applause. For a moment, she'd forgotten where she was, forgotten that she wasn't alone in the concert hall at midnight, playing only for herself. The standing ovation continued, led enthusiastically by Thomas Reynolds. Even conductor Bennett was on his feet, nodding appreciatively. Only Curtis Ellsworth remained seated, his eyes fixed on Claire with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. When the applause finally subsided, Curtis slowly rose from his chair. The hall fell silent in anticipation. "Miss Adams," he began, his voice oddly subdued. "Where did you learn to play like that?" Claire folded her hands in her lap. "Here, mostly in this hall after hours." "You've been playing?" "What, the concert pianos after cleaning them?" "Yes, sir. For about 15 years now." Curtis removed his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. When he looked up, his expression had changed. The condescension was gone, replaced by something more complex. Respect mingled with regret. "Miss Adams, your playing lacks certain technical refinements that would come with formal training," he said carefully. "There were imperfections that a conservatory graduate wouldn't make." Claire nodded. preparing herself for rejection. But Curtis continued, "You play with a depth of understanding that I haven't heard in quite some time." He cleared his throat. "You play Beethoven as he should be played, with passion, conviction, and authenticity." A murmur of agreement rippled through the orchestra members. "It appears," Curtis said, addressing the room as much as Claire, "that I have made an error in judgment, a rather significant one." He turned back to Claire, who sat stunned on the piano bench. "True musicianship, it seems, cannot be contained by conventional paths. Thank you for that reminder, Ms. Adams." The concert master leaned toward his colleague and whispered audibly, "Did Curtis Ellsworth just admit he was wrong?" Curtis's lips twitched in what might have been the beginning of a smile. "It's been known to happen once a decade or so." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind for Claire Adams. The news that Westbrook Symphony's prestigious pianist position had been awarded to a self-taught custodian spread through the classical music world like wildfire. Curtis Ellsworth, true to his unexpected change of heart, wrote a column about her that sent shock waves through the industry. In a world where technical perfection often masquerades as artistry, Claire Adams reminds us what music is truly about: communication, emotion, and authentic expression. Her journey challenges our assumptions about the paths to musical excellence. For Claire, the transition was both exhilarating and terrifying. She still found it strange to enter the concert hall through the front doors, to be greeted with respectful nods instead of being overlooked. The orchestra members, after initial skepticism, embraced her with surprising warmth, particularly after her first rehearsal demonstrated that her Appassionata performance had been no fluke. On the evening of her debut performance, Claire stood backstage, her heart pounding. She wore a simple but elegant black dress, a gift from the orchestra members who had pulled their resources. "Nervous?" asked Thomas Reynolds, appearing at her side. Terrified, Claire admitted, "Don't be. Just play like you did all those nights when you thought no one was listening." As Claire walked onto the stage to thunderous applause, she caught sight of Curtis Ellsworth in the front row. Their eyes met briefly, and he gave her a small, respectful nod. Seated at the piano, Claire took a deep breath and placed her fingers on the keys. In the audience sat her children, her neighbors, and 15 years' worth of colleagues from the maintenance staff, all dressed in their Sunday best. The moment her fingers struck the first chord, everything else faded away. There was only the music, the same music that had been her secret companion through years of quiet dedication. Only now she wasn't playing in an empty hall. Now the whole world was listening. Life often places extraordinary talents in unexpected places. Claire's story reminds us that true passion can't be confined by conventional paths or others' expectations. Have you ever been underestimated or found your calling later in life? Share your story in the comments below. If you're watching from somewhere around the world, let us know where you're tuning in from. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more inspiring stories that remind us all that it's never too late to step into the spotlight and share your gifts with the world.